On the wedding day, Yong Kook burst into tears and said words that made the bride cry. What could he have possibly revealed in that heart-stopping moment? The atmosphere turned electric. The guests held their breath. And the bride's tears told a story words could not. Let's join Red Carpet Reveal to uncover and explore the truth right now. The wedding hall shimmered with light. A sea of white flowers cascading down the aisle. Ears glowing like captured stars. Guests held their breath as the music swelled. The bride stepped forward with trembling grace, and the groom, singer Yong Kook, stood at the altar waiting for her. What should have been a picture-perfect moment, serene and beautiful, suddenly became something far deeper, far more unforgettable. For in that instant, Yong Kook's composure broke. His eyes filled with tears. His shoulders shook with emotion. As he tried to speak, his voice cracked under the weight of his heart. Then, before the audience of friends, family, and countless fans watching from afar, he uttered words so raw, so sincere, that the bride herself could no longer contain her emotions. Tears spilled down her cheeks, and the hall fell silent, overwhelmed by the intensity of the moment. What could a man say that would make his bride cry on the happiest day of her life? That question rippled through the crowd and later across the internet, stirring curiosity, compassion, and awe. The answer was not in scandal or spectacle, but in the undeniable truth that sometimes love, when spoken aloud, becomes too powerful to bear. Yong Kook had held back years of gratitude, promises, and confessions. And on this sacred day, he released them all, each word striking straight to the heart of the woman he loved. The story of this wedding did not begin with the flowers or the vows. It began long before, in a series of chance encounters and growing affections that had led two souls to this point. Yong Kook, known to many as a man of music and sincerity, was no stranger to emotional expression through song. Yet when it came to love, he had always been private, almost reserved. His fans admired him for his talent, but few knew the depth of his devotion behind closed doors. The bride, a woman whose name until recently remained out of headlines, had captured his heart not with fame or glamour, but with kindness, patience, and understanding. Her journey was one of quiet strength, weathering challenges together, building trust step by step. On the wedding day, all of that history seemed to hang in the air, like an invisible tapestry woven between them. Guests whispered about the couple's story, about the difficulties they had overcome, about the steadfastness of their relationship. To the outside world, it looked like the culmination of a fairy tale. But those closest to them knew that behind the smiles were years of perseverance, sacrifices made, and love tested by time. As the bride walked down the aisle, the air shifted. There was a hush, as though even the music softened out of reverence for the moment. Yong Kook's eyes locked onto hers. The crowd noticed the way his expression changed. He was no longer the polished performer, but a man stripped bare by love. When he took her hands in his, the weight of everything they had been through together seemed to collapse upon him. The tears came, unstoppable. Stoppable because they were real. At first, the audience thought he was simply overwhelmed. Many grooms are. But then he tried to speak. And that's when it became clear that something more was happening. His voice shook, not just with nerves but with a raw edge of confession. He looked into her eyes and said words that had been locked inside his chest for years. Words of gratitude for the way she had stood by him through storms. Words of apology for the times he had faltered. Of love so profound that even the strongest heart could not remain untouched. The bride broke down in tears, not of sadness, of recognition. Every sentence he spoke was a reflection of their journey together. Affirmation that all their struggles had been worth it. He covered her face briefly, unable to hold back the flood of emotion, before finally meeting his gaze with eyes full of love and vulnerability. It was a moment of unity so raw that even guests who had promised themselves they would not cry found tears sliding down their cheeks. When clips of the ceremony later surfaced online, fans erupted. "I've never seen a wedding like this," one wrote. "Felt like watching a drama. Except it was real," another posted. Those words, they weren't vows. They were his soul speaking. The internet buzzed with speculation over exactly what he had said. But regardless of interpretation, one truth was clear: Yong Kook had turned her wedding into a memory etched in eternity. The hours following the wedding were filled with joy, laughter, and music. But that one moment remained the centerpiece of the entire day. Even as guests enjoyed the feast, raised glasses, and shared stories. The topic everyone returned to was that emotional speech. Parents whispered about how rare it was to see such vulnerability from a man on his wedding day. Younger couples looked at each other with renewed hope, believing that love could be as deep and genuine as the one they had just witnessed. This wedding was not just a private event, it became a cultural phenomenon. In a society where weddings are often about display and formality, this one stood out for its authenticity. The decorations may have been flawless, music perfectly timed, the guest list glittering with stars. What people remembered most was not the spectacle, it was the honesty of a groom unable to hide his feelings. Yong Kook had shown that love, when true, cannot be contained, even in front of cameras and crowds. And it was that authenticity that made his bride weep tears that mirrored his own. As the day turned to night, the story of this wedding began to spread far beyond the walls of the ceremony. Journalists wrote about it with headlines full of awe. Fans created tribute videos, compiling every angle of the tearful moment into montages set to soft ballads. Social media exploded with hashtags celebrating the couple, with millions of users commenting on how moved they were by what they had witnessed. International fans joined the chorus, translating his words into multiple languages, ensuring that the emotion crossed borders as easily as music does. It became clear that this was not just a wedding, it was a narrative that would live on in the collective memory of entertainment history. Yong Kook, a man known for his artistry, inadvertently crafted his most powerful performance on the very stage of life itself. Only this time, there were no rehearsals, no scripts, takes. It was real, raw, and unforgettable. And yet, behind the glittering coverage, still a question lingering in the minds of many. What exactly were those words? Why did they touch the bride so deeply that she broke down before all? What truths, what promises, what confessions had been whispered that carried so much weight? The answer to that mystery, and the layers of meaning behind it, form the next chapter of this remarkable love story. Bride's tears first began to fall. It wasn't just a private moment between husband and wife, it was a tidal wave that swept across the hall. Those seated close enough to see her trembling hands understood instantly that these were not polite tears for ceremony's sake. They were the kind of tears that come only when a heart has been cracked open, when words pierce so deep that they strike the very soul. For the bride, this was not merely a wedding vow, it was the unveiling of years of unspoken emotions. Yong Kook's voice, thick with tears, had reached into the most vulnerable part of her being. In that instant, her composure dissolved, and she let the world witness her rawest, most beautiful truth, that she loved him as fiercely as he loved her. Later, when interviewed by close friends, she admitted she had expected sweet promises and maybe a poetic line or two. What she had not expected was the confessional honesty of a man who had carried his emotions like a burden until that very day. He had thanked her for saving him during moments of weakness, believing in him when others doubted, for staying when leaving would have been easier. He confessed his fears, his flaws, his regrets, and then, in the same breath, declared that she had turned his life into something worth living. No bride could remain untouched by such naked vulnerability. Her tears were not of sadness but of recognition, that she mattered beyond measure, that their love was not surface-level romance but a bond forged in fire. Guests whispered about the bride long after she left the altar. They spoke of how radiant she looked even with tears staining her face, how her vulnerability made her beauty all the more striking. Said it was the first time they had seen such authentic emotion at a celebrity wedding, where so often perfection and performance overshadow truth. The sincerity of her reaction reminded everyone present that weddings are not just ceremonies. They are crucibles where two souls declare themselves without armor. The media, of course, used this story with unrelenting hunger. By the next morning, headlines screamed across entertainment portals, Yong Kook's tearful vows leave bride in tears. The wedding that stunned a nation. Words became more powerful than music. Social media platforms lit up like wildfire, with clips of the emotional exchange spreading faster than any official broadcast could contain. Fans subtitled the video in multiple languages, English, Japanese, Vietnamese, Thai, ensuring that audiences worldwide could feel the weight of his words. Within hours, the hashtags associated with the wedding soared to the top of trending lists, uniting millions in collective awe. But the fascination didn't end with the facts. Fans and commentators alike began analyzing the hidden meanings behind his speech. Some said his tears reflected the pressure he had endured as a performer, finally finding peace in a partner who accepted him without conditions. Others believed it was a cultural shift in real time, a celebrity challenging the traditional stoicism expected of men, instead embracing emotional honesty on one of the most public days of his life. Critics who had once dismissed him as just another balladeer now praised him for redefining masculinity, for showing that strength is not found in silence but in the courage to weep openly. In the bride's perspective, this was the moment she would carry forever. Friends later described how she replayed the memory in her mind, each word etched into her heart like a sacred vow. She said that what touched her most was not the promises of a bright future, but the acknowledgement of the past, the recognition of the moments when love had been tested, when life had threatened to pull them apart. How through it all, they had chosen each other again and again. It was a reminder that their union was not built on illusion, on resilience. That truth, spoken in front of family, friends, and the world, was more precious than any jewel she could wear. History colleagues were equally moved. Fellow singers posted tributes online, many admitting they had watched the wedding video repeatedly. One popular ballad singer wrote, "I thought I knew what it meant to sing about love. But watching Yong Kook speak, I realized I've only scratched the surface." Actors who had worked with him applauded his bravery, saying he had given a gift not only to his bride but to everyone who witnessed the moment. Producers, journalists, even critics, people not often swayed by sentiment, found themselves admitting that this wedding had reminded them of love's true power. In the days that followed, the story of Kim Jong-kook's wedding transcended gossip columns and entered the realm of cultural reflection. Talk shows debated the symbolism of his tears. Scholars discussed how his public vulnerability might influence a younger generation of men who struggle with expressing emotion. Marriage counselors even pointed to the vows as an example of how honesty can strengthen relationships. What began as a private event had turned into public dialogue about love, masculinity, and authenticity. Fans, of course, remained at the heart of the narrative. Many confessed that the wedding gave them hope. Watching a beloved star express love so fearlessly made them believe in their own chances at happiness. Some admitted they had cried watching the video, even if they didn't understand the language, because the emotions were universal. Online forums filled with personal stories, viewers writing about their own relationships, their own regrets, their own longing to speak as openly as Kim Jong-kook had spoken. The wedding had become more than news, it was an inspiration. As the weeks passed, one truth became undeniable: this was a wedding that would never be forgotten. The decorations would fade. Music would be replaced by newer songs. But that moment, the tears, the words, the bride's breaking composure, had been immortalized in memory and media. People would return to it again and again, just as they returned to their favorite songs or their most cherished dramas. And so, as the story reaches its close, circle back to the moment that began it all. On the wedding day, Kim Jong-kook burst into tears and said words that made the bride cry. It was not a performance, not a spectacle. The most genuine act of love one could imagine. Those tears were not weakness, but strength. Those words were not rehearsed, but born of truth. In that moment, two people became one, not just by law or ceremony, but by the shared heartbeat of vulnerability. This is why the world still talks about it. Why fans still share the clips. Why tears continue to fall even from strangers who stumble upon the video. Because deep down, everyone longs to hear words like those. To feel love so overwhelming that it shatters composure and leaves only truth. And so, Red Carpet revealed bows with gratitude to its readers. Thank you for walking with us through this extraordinary story. For feeling the tremors of emotion. Honoring the love that unfolded before the world. Weddings come and go, but some moments are eternal. This was one of them. Let us carry it forward, not just as a story of a celebrity, but as a reminder of the power of words, of tears, and the courage it takes to love with everything you are.